In just 9 minutes, get the most explosive insights from Stephen Bartlett's fiery debate with economists Gary Stevenson and Daniel Priestley on The Diary of a CEO. They expose how the middle class is dying, why the rich are fleeing the UK, and whether a financial apocalypse is coming in 2025. Stay till the end for the 10 key takeaways from the podcast. This affects you. Takeaway 1. The economy is collapsing for most people. The average person in the UK and US is getting poorer, and life is becoming more difficult. Wages have not kept up with inflation, and the cost of essentials like food, housing, and energy is out of control. The idea that people just need to work harder or be more entrepreneurial to succeed is unrealistic because the economy itself is broken. For example, in the UK, energy prices are the highest in the Western world. A decade ago, it took about 3 years to save for a home deposit, but now it takes over 20 years, if a person can save at all. In the US, the cost of housing and rent has also skyrocketed, and many young people are giving up on the dream of ever owning a home. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 2. Governments printed trillions, but only the rich got richer. During the COVID-19 pandemic, governments handed out trillions of dollars to stimulate the economy. But instead of this money going to regular people, it mostly ended up in the hands of the rich. The wealth gap widened dramatically as stock prices soared and billionaires saw their fortunes explode. For example, in the UK, the government deficit increased by £1 trillion, and in the US, it rose by $4 trillion. While ordinary workers received small stimulus checks or temporary unemployment benefits, the majority of government money ended up with corporations and wealthy investors. This massive transfer of wealth from the bottom to the top was barely discussed in the media. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 3, home ownership is now a fantasy for young people. For younger generations, the dream of owning a home is slipping away. The biggest reason is that housing wealth is concentrated among baby boomers, who bought homes when prices were low and interest rates were favorable. Meanwhile, today's young people face inflated prices, high mortgage rates, and stagnant wages. For example, in the UK, 78% of homeownership wealth is controlled by people over 65. Many large family homes have 2 or more empty bedrooms, but their owners refuse to downsize. In contrast, younger people struggle to rent a small apartment, let alone buy a home. The same trend is happening in the US, where housing prices have climbed far beyond what most young workers can afford. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 4. Wealth inequality is not just a problem. It is causing living standards to collapse. Inequality is increasing at a dangerous rate. It is not just that some people are rich, it is that their wealth is coming at the expense of everyone else. As the wealthiest 1% accumulate more assets, the middle class is being squeezed out. More people are living paycheck to paycheck, unable to afford even basic necessities. For example, if the economy is only growing at 1% per year, but billionaires' wealth is growing at 30%, that means their gains are coming from somewhere. In reality, that wealth is being extracted from ordinary workers. The middle class is shrinking, and more people are being pushed into poverty. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 5. Millionaires are fleeing the UK, and this will make things worse. The UK is currently losing millionaires at a faster rate than any other country in the world. In 2024 alone, over 10,800 high-net-worth individuals left the country, with 1 millionaire departing every 45 minutes. This is a serious problem because millionaires contribute a huge portion of tax revenue, and their departure means that ordinary workers will have to pay even more taxes. For example, the top 1% of earners in the UK contribute about 30% of total income tax. As more millionaires leave, the government will have to make up for lost revenue by raising taxes on middle-class workers. The main reason for this exodus is that the UK recently ended the non-dom tax scheme, which allowed wealthy individuals to avoid taxes on their global income. When this policy changed, wealth managers advised their clients to relocate to tax havens like Dubai and Monaco. We're halfway through the video. Thank you for sticking with us this far. If you're enjoying it, please give us a thumbs up and share it in your WhatsApp groups. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to comment below. To see more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Now let's continue with the video. Takeaway 6. The US is outperforming the UK economically, but at a cost. The US economy is doing significantly better than the UK's in terms of growth and innovation. In the last quarter of 2024, US GDP grew by 6%, while the UK's barely moved at 0.1%. However, the US has also taken on massive amounts of debt to fuel this growth, and eventually this will have consequences. For example, the US stock market has surged by 300% in the past decade, while the UK's FTSE 100 has actually declined by 20%. American incomes have grown by 72% since 2007, while UK incomes have actually fallen by 2% in dollar terms. The key difference is that the US has embraced technological innovation and government spending, while the UK has been more focused on cutting government costs. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 7. Monopolies are taking over, and small businesses cannot compete. A handful of massive corporations now dominate nearly every major industry, making it harder for smaller businesses to succeed. The rise of digital monopolies, especially in technology and retail, has made true competition nearly impossible. For example, Amazon does not just dominate online shopping. It also owns AWS, which powers much of the internet, Whole Foods, Twitch, and several other industries. These tech giants control the economy and can influence policies in their favor. Small businesses struggle to survive because they cannot compete with the low prices and market control of these companies. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 8. Economic freedom is being destroyed by big government and corporate elites. In theory, a free market economy allows anyone to succeed based on their effort and ability. But in practice, economic freedom is being crushed by excessive government regulation and corporate favoritism. While governments claim they are helping people, their policies often benefit the rich while making life harder for the middle class. For example, the UK's Economic Freedom Index has dropped from 82 in 2006 to just 68 today. This means that people now have fewer opportunities to create wealth, start businesses, or improve their financial situations. Meanwhile, massive corporations use legal loopholes to avoid taxes, keeping their profits offshore. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 9. The next financial crisis will hit the middle class the hardest. Many people assume that another major financial crisis is unlikely, but experts warn that it is coming. When it happens, the middle class will be the ones who suffer the most. Those with money will buy assets at bargain prices, while those in debt will lose everything. For example, during the 2008 financial crash, millions of ordinary families lost their homes, but the rich bought up real estate at record low prices. A similar scenario is playing out now, where ordinary people struggle with rising mortgage rates while wealthy investors continue to accumulate property. Now let's move to the last takeaway. Takeaway 10. The system is rigged and politicians will not fix it. Governments and politicians have no real incentive to fix the broken economy because they benefit from the current system. Wealthy elites control policy decisions, and most politicians are part of the same upper-class network. For example, former UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak comes from a billionaire family and personally earns millions in passive income. Why would someone like him push for policies that would reduce his own wealth? Similarly, in the US, many politicians receive funding from large corporations and billionaires, so they are unlikely to support policies that would hurt their donors. This podcast provides a harsh reality check about the state of the economy. The rich are getting richer, the middle class is disappearing, and governments are doing little to stop it. If trends continue, future generations will face even greater economic hardship, while the wealthiest few continue to gain more power and control. Here is a brief introduction about the guests, Gary Stevenson and Daniel Priestley. Gary Stevenson is a British economist, former financial trader, and author of The Trading Game. Daniel Priestley is an award-winning serial entrepreneur who has written 5 books on starting and scaling businesses. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, please leave a like below and share this video in your WhatsApp groups. You can also discuss about this video by commenting below. To get more such videos in your timeline, press the subscribe button below.